Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. It's great to see you.
Good to see you too. Our paths have crossed a few times, but this is probably the first time our paths have really crossed where we have nothing to do with each other. We're just having a good time chatting.
That's true. It's great to be free of the corporate constraints that would require the dialogue to be different. It'll be great to talk to you this way.
Nice, nice. Now, I know your accomplished background. You've done a tremendous amount of things in a pretty young, in a pretty short period of time. I'd love to go right to the beginning of your career and where you went to school and get a little check in on, did you know this was all coming? I want to know what you were thinking back then.
Thanks. It's a great one, and I love the title of the show because I'm almost 50. So that's the key.
I got you
And
covered on that.
yeah, it's great. Yeah, look, I was fortunate because I now have kids that are about to go through this process of going to college, where I applied and got into one school. So I went to Tufts University. I was recruited to play basketball, and I had decent grades, and I got into the school and stayed there for 4 years. A wonderful experience. But I did kind of know early, it's the late '90s, and I did kind of know early that the internet was this thing that was coming for us. We got email in our sophomore year. That was like the first big technological innovation in education at that point in a long time. So I majored in economics and I minored in computer science. And I can tell you, I have written 0 lines of actual code, maybe a few lines since I graduated college. So, but I did know that sort of management and technology and those things coming together. I knew media and technology were sort of coming together. I had an uncle who was in the movie business at the time. If you ever saw the first breakdance movie, Break In or Break Into Electric Boogaloo, which everybody knows, that is
Everybody
my
knows. I saw Break In 1 and 2 in the theaters, Mark. All
yeah, that was
right.
my uncle wrote, cast, produced it. I don't know, he did like five jobs on that movie. And so I had this bug about how these things were going to come together, but I didn't know what that was going to be. And I was very fortunate that my father pushed me. He's like, don't go into one or the other. Pick one of these broad schools and a broad career at the beginning, just so you could figure it out. And I was very, very lucky that he gave me that advice, which is what I did. And I really got exposure to a lot of things, including having an early career in finance, which was very helpful as an underpinning.
We have some fun overlaps. I went in as a CE slash double E major, came out with an econ degree instead. Was on my high school basketball team, but I think I was discouraged from applying for scholarships. So, the early days of the internet, were you thinking I'm going to be in the tech side of the world? Did any of that have a calling to you?
The coolest thing, my first job out of school was at a firm called Hamert and Quist. And if you're of the age of this podcast, you would know that firm. And if you're younger, you're like, I don't know what that firm is, because it was in my tenure there, bought by Chase, and then Chase merged with JP Morgan. So I ended up as a TMT investment banker at JP Morgan, but I started as a junior analyst TMT guy at Hambricht and Quist, or H&Q as people called it. And so I was doing late '90s IPOs and M&A deals at 22, and we were so busy that at the end of my second year, go do this one by yourself. I'm like, by myself? I don't even know how this is supposed to happen. So I ended up working on this incredible volume of what I would call early internet, mostly media adjacent deals, although I did some sort of core SaaS, core healthcare tech, some other sort of big
Sure.
tech deals. So yes, it was technology leaning, but but I was always sort of wait, doesn't this have to do with audience? Doesn't this have to do with advertising or subscriptions or something like that? And so I was very lucky to have that experience. And we'll probably get to it later, but my career comes very, very full circle to those first few deals that I did, because I end up working at one of those companies, right? Which is kind of crazy. It was technology driven in terms of my thinking that was going to transform the businesses that I was most interested in at that age.
It's funny, the late 90s time of things. I would argue that there were more people put in positions of where they were utterly, whether they had this much skills or were fully incompetent or whatever. We were all just sort of hey, you know a thing, go be in charge of that thing. That I don't think really translates today.
Maybe an AI today, maybe AI is the next technological innovation that mirrors the path of the internet, where there's just so much investment early that half of this investment is going to be wrong. It's going to be
Right.
wrong, but it's okay, because the other half will be so valuable that it doesn't matter. And by the way, I have no idea if it's half or some other percentage, but it definitely felt that way. I think we all knew half these things we're financing or taking public or merging together are just not going to exist. Like you'd see, Uber didn't exist, but something called Fetch did, which would like deliver stuff to your house, or like,
Cosmo. Remember
yeah,
Cosmo?
Cosmo.com. And I think I priced the options for that or something one year. Or like, and even some of the same entrepreneurs come around again. I just saw Jeremy Allaire on TV this morning doing an interview about his new company, or not new, but his current success, which is Circle, which is one of the biggest IPOs of the year. He's also the
Right.
founder of Brightcove, which I was the most recent CEO of. He also had his brother ran Allaire Systems back in the late
Back
90s,
in
which
the, yeah.
H&T was doing some of the banking for. So you just sort of like go, it's like some people have a tendency to also just figure out how to be around those technological shifts that really make a difference and in the economy and where things go. So I think we all knew there was some, there was literally Goldman was taking companies public that had no revenue, right? I remember one called
Right.
Whoosh, which was about printing. And you're like, what does printing have to do with internet? But they were like, oh, we'll take your business card orders over the internet. I mean, that's how novel that was. It sounds so simplistic now, right? But that was like a novel thing then. So that's a wonderful way, I think, for young people also to gain responsibility quicker, is be the person that is experimenting in the innovators area. And you may be wrong, and you may be in a tough place, and it may cause you to move forward or backwards more quickly, but like keep going. Like I was, some advice someone gave me early was, when you go to switch into something new or take a new job or take a new career, like don't worry about titles so much, or like where it puts you. Like worry about where the next 2 to 3 years of traffic are going to be. Like what are you going to see that's coming across your desk or your screen? And if those things are great and wonderful, like you'll do, and you work hard and you do the right things, like it'll be great and wonderful for you too.
I think that's such a good statement, especially around titles, by the way, because even back then, I think when we all got thrust into this .com, hey, we're all grown-ups, this is the world, enjoy, it wasn't as title driven, although everybody was getting these weird VP and whatever kind of titles. Whereas I think now it's sort of become, I was talking about this on another episode, is that, if you think about that era that you and I sort of came into the workforce, never before had people like us been able to watch the Jeremy Allaire's and others go huge, right? You couldn't, like, who was it was Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and that was it, right?
Yeah. So people view it as they invented with their own brain something that like almost no one else could do, or like, it was very novel. This individual could create this one thing.
Yeah.
I think what happened in the internet era is that like if you just had a good business idea, the internet could carry you to the right 2, 3, 4 other steps. I actually think AI has a lot of similarities, right? You're now saying like,
Agreed.
if you have a bunch of business ideas, AI might be able to just at least start them for you, whether it's, low effort coding, or, the right way to figure out the business plan by typing it into a prompt, by not needing a consultant to help you figure out that strategy. Like there's a lot of like, I don't know if they're perfect parallels, but they certainly feel adjacent, that it was a moment where like you did not need to be an engineer or to have invented something other than a great idea to have something execute to financial success. And that was, a beginning of really unique time that I don't think has ended. I think it's just continued and continued. And I don't think it's gotten easier, but it's definitely happened more.
I don't think it's gotten easier, because what's gotten easier is sort of the how we do it, almost the same way like, building buildings, like, you just go to Home Depot and get wood. You don't cut down a tree anymore, right? That was like coding HTML, was like cutting down a tree in the woods. I'm curious, when someone of your background looks at the AI tech, are you yourself tinkering with any of the like vibe coding, or like what attracts you in this tech as a playground?
Yeah, I'm lucky. I'm in one of those periods in my career where I have a willful unemployment on my resume right now, and that's given me time to really start to play around with some new things. And I have started to check it out. I have not launched anything. I have no products. I have nothing to push. Nothing like that. But yes, I have started to experiment a little bit just to see and understand, and it is pretty clear to me, and through the teams I was managing over the last few years, like the ease of access to information, as long as it's not IP driven or copyrighted,
Right.
is pretty amazing. And that's what the internet promised and delivered. But this is like a whole other level of like, when I tell my son that like, oh, when I search and then I look through these links and then I click on it, he's like, why don't you just talk to it? And he's 12. He's beyond the prompt already, right? He's not like,
Right.
do I craft this prompt? He's like, I'm just going to ask it what I want and it's going to figure it out for me. and I had a lot of faith in that, but I maybe have less, but so far, but it is going to be pretty amazing. I think the transformation that's ahead of us, but I also am a believer it's slower than the most extremists think, right? Like some people are like, oh, 18 months from
Like
now, all
everything.
these jobs and all these changes. I'm like, guys, like I went to the DMV recently, like, so let me tell you, they don't even have computer systems from 20 years ago there yet. So like, there's plenty of systems in our society that are going to need revamping that are not going to happen in the next 18 months. So maybe building and deploying servers and like things that are at the most tipping point edge of like where that goes happen fast. I don't think
Right.
everything happens as fast as that side, but I don't think it's zero either, right? I mean, I think we're going to accelerate in a meaningful way. So it's going to be interesting. I'm here for the ride. I got years left to keep executing, so I'm excited to see where it goes.
Same here. I want to go back now. Let's go to sort of the end of the .com era, 2000, 2001. Did at any point around here, did you have a vision of where you wanted to take your career? You watched all these entrepreneurs, you've seen all these VCs, you've talked about media tech.
Yeah, you brought up 2001, and it was actually the year that changed a lot for me. Living in San Francisco, where my family is in New York, where I grew up, and my parents had sold their house after my brother and I went to school. They had lived in the city, and they were in the city for 9/11, and that was
Oh,
like a
wow.
scary moment, right? So they, within a year, moved out. They were back to the suburbs where they had spent most of their adult life, and they were like, "Why did we do this? Yeah, we're going back to woods and safety or whatever they felt." And it got me thinking pretty hard about like, did I really want to be an investment banker in this space, or did I feel more attuned to the operator side of the business? So I made two decisions at that moment. One was I absolutely want to be an operator, and I don't want to be. Doesn't mean I can't use those skills. Doesn't mean I don't respect those skills. Doesn't think I think they're absolutely necessary, and I've used them to this day. But I think I also wanted to manage teams and be in that. I had grown up a team sport athlete. I had like the part that was team oriented, and the part that wasn't team oriented of the job I was doing, I found less interesting.
And
And
had you
so,
never done that professionally? Like, did you go out straight into banking? Like,
yeah, and you manage no one. You manage like five people at the
yeah,
most. And so, and I was president of my fraternity. I was always seeking these like roles where I could lead, but lead only with other people, right? It wasn't about lead from a stage. It was more about lead from a group, right? And so I just love that part of it. So I was like, how do I figure this out? And I said, I need time. And the other transition I decided is I really loved the media and entertainment business, and I just wanted to get in some way, shape, or form. And I had gone to film school for one semester in undergrad at NYU over a summer, and I shot the Sight and Sound films, the same one Scorsese and all the others did. And when I walked out of that summer, it was like my sophomore year, I think, at Tufts, and I said, I might be good at this over a long period of time. I am not good at this, immediately. Like I didn't just like all of a sudden like my movies are not in the Smithsonian on well, like his like first Sight Sound film is amazing. Right? It's called The Big Shave, and it's all done by close-ups where the guy starts cutting himself and you start laughing. I mean, it's actually a comedy, and you don't realize that what he's done is supposed to be funny, and so and you just start laughing in the middle of it. But anyway, I realized there I was like probably not going to be a direct filmmaker. Like was I going to be the artist, or was I going to be something else? And so I said, hey, my math skills are probably better, that I could use those to be better involved in this industry. So I was like, how do I do that? I decided that going back to business school was the right answer for me. I applied to the key four schools that I liked. It was like Stanford was nearby, UCLA had the film program, Columbia and NYU were back home and had the film programs. And ultimately, NYU is where I ended up. Thankfully, it was a wonderful choice and decision. It's been a long-term part of my life. I met my wife there. I am an adjunct professor there now. I gave the commencement address to the graduating class of the graduate program in 2019. Like I've had just a wonderful experience being part of that community. And what it did is it gave me 2 years to just get involved in the space that I really wanted to be involved in. Right. So I was in New York. I was able to like network and do all the things I needed to do. I took every internship anybody would give me. I worked at Cablevision. I worked at Miramax back when that was the thing, and ultimately got a job at NBC. I hadn't graduated and got the job because they were working on a small deal. It was the largest media merger in history when they were buying Universal. So I was on that corporate development team. And I think I started in April, and I didn't graduate till like May or June. So it was like one of those things where it just all happened so fast, but I was exactly what I needed to transition and get into something more operational, right? Like into an actual company doing actual things that I really wanted to be a part of.
Did you get that role through just some open application? Was it through someone you had worked with before?
It was really cool. So I had done all those internships and I was networking, and I was the head of the like media club at NYU, and I had thrown this conference with a number of other colleagues from other schools. It was like a collection of schools that had an entertainment, media, and or technology program, which was like NYU, Columbia, Penn. I think Duke was in there. I'm trying to remember. It was like 20 something years ago,
Yeah.
and we had brought all these people together, and through that, people like knew I was interested in the space, and one of the other classmates like called and said, like her friend was recruiting for a role in this group because they had so much to do. And like, they were like, would you be, and like, you have a perfect background because you were a banker. So you could do the, help with the transaction, but like also get into this team. And I was like, yes, please. And it was one of those points where I had to take a job where I made less money and had a quote unquote lesser title than when I left banking as my first job out of business school. But I was like, I just want in to the company. And by the way, that group has been like just an incredible set of colleagues for 25 years. My old boss from that group is now Bruce Campbell, one of the top couple guys at Warner Brothers, and guy that runs Tegna, Mike Stye, was my colleague in that group. And like, just those people just fanned out of that group into incredible places. And so I view it as one of the like, best, stopping points in my career. And I was only in it for 2 years, but it was
It's
just
like
an
the
incredible.
NBC Uni Mafia, if you were.
Yeah. And it was NBC buying Universal and then like getting to work across all those divisions as you integrate them. Like I learned so much. I learned film finance. I learned the theme park business where I was helping do all the restructurings of those businesses as we took them in. And then I learned television that way. And I learned that we didn't really have a great digital media division and maybe we should start one of those, which we did, while I was there. And that's what I fanned out into that group. It's called NBCU Digital Studios or something like that, and we ended up on that team together. And just amazing to the key is just finding your way into one of these places that you want to work at, and then making your way. As I said, getting that good flow of traffic. Something a mentor of mine had told me, and I totally took that on, and I think everybody should. It's like getting that flow of traffic, and that flow will take you somewhere.
Yeah, I love that. I think I sometimes look back on moments in my career, and if there's one, I'm not a big sliding doors guy. I do like, I like the reminiscing about it, about what it might have been, or this, that, or the other, because it's more for the fun and the thought experiment. One of the things I've recognized as I look back, and I'm glad you said the way you did, is I feel like I haven't done a great job keeping that like, here, these core people you worked with. They're all going to go off and spread and do great things. I sort of feel like I've stayed adjacent, but not necessarily in that core.
Somehow I figured out early that what networking actually is not like sending out 52 cold emails to people you don't know on LinkedIn. It's not any of these things. It's that when you come across interesting, great, smarter, funnier, whatever the thing is in your career, type of people, just embrace them, embrace who they are and how they are with you, and don't lose touch with it, even if you lose touch with them, right? Like you can have that relationship go away for years and come back. Like it's really interesting. I had a colleague from H&Q, so it's 25 years ago, as my analyst, like sort of bunk mate, right? You have these cubes. I sat next to me in the cube. Private equity investor. He just did his second deal in the media, like an ad tech space. And he reached out and I was like, Bobby Dunn, how are you? I haven't talked to you in 20 years. What's going on? And like just reconnecting like that in that way. So I think, don't sleep on the fact that the people that are sitting next to you in the trenches, in the next management layer, in the CEO suite, whatever it is, they're going to go off and do some really interesting things. And the way you can stay connected to those people really helps. Like the advice I gave that class in 2019 when I gave that commencement address was like, I had to like come up with my theses on management. Like, why does this matter? And I was like, oh God, now I have to put like, real names to this. And I did a lot of like 80-20, like use the Pareto principle, spend 80% of your time on the things that really make a difference, but make sure 20% is spent on the stuff that, you have to do and make it get done. But one of my biggest ones was about engagement. Like people say, do what you love. What if you love making like doing puzzles, like wood puzzles? Like you can't make a living at that. But
As an avid jigsaw puzzler, you're right.
yeah, I mean, maybe somebody can, but it's not
You
you or
know,
me.
But the problem is that big puzzle's always keeping us down.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah. And there's only 3 creators and they're just pictures. Anyway, the idea is more engagement. Like if you can just be engaged, if you wake up and someone says, hey, you want to come to dinner with some people in your industry that you might not know? If your answer is yes, you found your spot, right? Like
Right.
just something you like to talk about. And so for me, the combination of sort of media, entertainment, and technology coming together for the last 20 to 30 years, I'll talk about that all day long. And I sort of encourage people, if you don't love like building products, don't go become a building products analyst. And it's not about, you don't have to have a passion for wood if you're building a product, but like if you have a passion for building, then like that would be interesting for you. And you'll get out of bed every morning feeling like that's interesting. So it's really just finding something that you can be engaged in and get that going. And that makes the networking part so much easier.
Yeah, I was at a meetup out here in Westchester a week and a half ago, and I sort of got there and I was like, I wasn't actually, I got there and I was like, that time where you're like, I kind of want to just go right back home. And but I started talking to people, and one person happened to also be a media tech guy, and we just started, and I realized like I was feeling sort of that introverted. I don't feel like meeting people, but I was also feeling that excitement to chat with anybody who could talk sort of my talk, right?
Yes.
And knew some of the lingo. I want to shift back to a bit of your career because you took a lot of steps fairly fast and ended up getting to put on some big boy boots pretty quickly in your career. I'd love for you to talk through a little bit like how did the world come to align for that to happen? And obviously you are a smart and talented guy, so we're just going to let that be part of the table stakes here.
Oh, thanks for that. And I think the same about you too, Jeremy. That's why we
Oh,
worked
thanks,
well
buddy.
together when we did. I was very lucky in terms of timing, right? Like the internet was booming when I came out of school. I got a great job to start. I got great training. I went back to school and had all those stars aligned to get to another good lily pad. And the good question is like, how do you get to that next lily pad? Do you go too fast or too slow? And a guy who used to be the president of NBC, a guy named Neil Braun, is one of my mentors, got in touch with me through a business school classmate. He had left NBCU. He had gone to started an animation company with a famous animator, and then he had merged it with another company called Anchor Bay Home Entertainment, which was the largest independent home entertainment company back in the early 2000s. And he effectively came to recruit me out of NBCU. And the first time we talked, he was like, you shouldn't leave. You should stay in that flow of traffic. It's awesome. You're in this new digital media division there. Like you should go try to run that stuff with these other people and make that happen. I was like, great. 6 months later, he's like, I really need you to come take this job. Like I need and he made me a great offer and I took it. And literally 4 months later, we sold the company to Liberty. So I don't even put it on my resume because we packaged this company up and we literally were going to go, we're like, oh, we'll IPO it. Nope, we sold it to Liberty. Liberty merged us with Stars. And they made Stars was purely a cable channel at the time, didn't do anything else. We became the distribution, production, studio, and home entertainment division to make it a sort of a full-fledged media company at the time. And so it was amazing. Like I was like, oh my God, it was almost too fast. It wasn't some huge financial home run for me because I don't think I invested a penny, it was too fast to happen, but awesome experience. I was running both corporate development and anything digital or licensing. And this was the beginning of the Netflix Hulu era. So I was doing early DVD deals with Netflix. It's like me negotiating with Robert Kintl, who's now the CEO of Warner Music Group, to put our titles on this new thing, and same thing with YouTube and same thing with, all these things that are now absolutely juggernauts in our industry. This was the beginning of those things. And I thought I would stay for a couple of years and leave. And then Neil effectively teed it up. So I ended up with his job, right? So he was running this division and he sort of handed me a huge portion of that job, when he effectively stepped down a couple of years later. So I ended up staying 6 years and I became the head of this digital media division, which we grew from 0 to probably 60 or $70 million out of nothing. So it was my first 0 to 50. And it was a combination of licensing and running some web properties. And we owned some really interesting things, a bunch of fitness titles, a bunch of anime, a bunch of drama. And then we were creating the original content for Stars in a lot of ways, like Spartacus and Party Down and some of the old school originals. And I was also the head of corporate development, for the overall corporation. So we were selling off our animation division and doing lots of sort of things like that. And so I was very, it was fast, right? It was leave, 4 months later, sold, 2 years later, got a much, much larger job. So all that title diminution I was all worried about out the window. I'm at like an EVP in like 2 years or 3 years later or whatever. I don't remember the specific timing. And I ended up doing it for like a pretty long time, right? At one place, I had, that was, so, my career looks like a lot of big chunks, right? It's sort of like a 5-year chunk in banking and then a 6-year chunk effectively at Stars after that sort of 2-year, 3-year stint at NBCU. So it was a great start. And then, the story be told, that networking stuff paid off again. A colleague from Hamberton quit when we merged with Chase. My office mate down down the hallway was a guy named Xander Laurie, who had become the CFO of CNET, and CNET had been acquired by CBS, and then had bumped Xander up the chain, and he had hired, or they had bought a company called Clicker, which then hired Jim Lanzone, and Jim and Xander were like, got to run these divisions, got to run CNET, and I got to run the CBS television side. Like, well, who are we going to get that knows technology and television at the same time and that can help Jim, effectively, run that business? And they, Xander's like, I know this guy, you should meet. And so that's how I met Jim. And eventually, the next 10 years of my career would be written, in that place, which was a wonderful experience.
What was the actual first role you were brought in for to CBS?
Yeah, so at CBSI, I was the head of, I think the actual first role was like sort of a mishmash of things. It was like sort of the entertainment properties, which included CBS.com, but also some of the properties that CBS Interactive had collected that were in the entertainment space. But quickly, I think within a year, we all realized that like we should have a CBS division and we should have a not CBS division, right, which was CNET Media Group over time. And so, Jim ran the place, and Eric Johnson, who also an old H&Q colleague, by the way, who we had worked together years before. So he ran CNET and I ran CBS. And that was it's probably the first 3 or 4 years while we were there. We were shaping that thing up to be a growth engine for all of CBS to come.
For anyone listening, this is sort of the beginning of CBS All Access, which basically today is Paramount Plus, with some hops and jumps along the way. Were you excited about sort of the rest of the CBSI like where were you as far as like media entertainment and like web? Was that exciting?
I think because CBS All Access was so successful and became Paramount Plus and is now, $10 billion of value in the ecosystem, people forget that the first few years that we as a team went into CBS Interactive was really it was a transformation. It was not like, hey, we got hockey stick growth, let's go manage this growth. We had to create that growth. And the starting point was we were a 90% desktop focused, next day after air, a few episodes. Like we did not have we had good traffic. CNET was a hefty traffic driver. So were some of the other properties we owned. And CBS had good shows and was like the number one, network for people over the age of 45. But like, that's your starting point with like not really growing revenue and a challenging moment. So we really had to transform that business from being, the first was desktop to mobile, right? The mobile phone had just become a consumption device, probably like 2010, 2011. That's I joined in 2011. So before we don't launch CBS All Access till 2014. So those first 3 years we're getting CBS Interactive as an entity to be what it was, which then, we turned it to, 50-50 mobile desktop and then, way more connected TV over time. We turned it into, instead of just an ad business, into an ad and subscription business and a B2B, sort of licensing business. And we started to grow traffic again, right? That was the big key. So we became the third largest set of properties on the internet after, probably 3 or 4 years there. So that was a huge transformation. So going from desktop, mobile, traffic driving, getting revenue to grow, making it profitable because CBS had to be profitable because the public company.
Sure.
And in those ways, and Les Moonves and Joe Iannello, who were running the place, did not take, it was fund your own fuel, like find your own way to make that grow. And then, look, we had sketched out early, like we should probably have our own direct-to-consumer and direct-to-consumer subscription service. That was something Jim and I and others had talked about for a bit of time, but we were like, could we, should we? And then, I give the senior management there credit, especially Joe Iannello, for like saying, yes, we should. But the way to get that done is you have to shepherd it through the entire company for like a year of just getting everybody on board and comfortable that it wasn't going to, mess up every one of the other businesses while we did it. And so it really was a thoughtful process to like launch something like CBS All Access with the right price, the right content at the right time on the right platforms, do it all in secret, which we did. And I always take a lot of pride that we kept that thing a secret. It was called Project Subway for those old schoolers, right? Because it
I
was
didn't
such
even know that one. That's,
yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of these stories, but that's a new one for me right there.
Yeah, and so like Project Subway was under wraps for over a year. When we launched in October, we were in the same headline in the New York Times with HBO Max or whatever. It wasn't called Max, HBO Go or whatever it was going to be called at the time.
HBO, I think that at that time it was HBO Now.
Now, but they were just announcing it, and we were
Right.
launching it. And so they were like, "Oh, they'll launch in 6 months." I'm like, "We're live the next day," and got it off the ground. So that was it's a tremendous experience. It was great to get to that moment. And honestly, the rest of that is just an absolute rocket ship of growth for the company for the next, till now. I mean, it's still, it's probably it's slowing down a little bit, but it's been an incredible journey, to watch that company go from, or that part of the company go from, a division to now the largest revenue driver, largest growth driver, and most of what people invest in that company for today.
People don't realize that the early days of Hulu, CBS wasn't part of it, right?
Yeah, and that was honestly, that was before my time there, before, we, Zone and before anybody got there, they had made a good strategic decision not to be a part of Hulu, and so that they could have the dry powder to do something themselves. They didn't know what the something was, they didn't know how to
Right.
do it, but they were like, why should we, the number one network, take a quarter of this thing when we could have 100% of our own thing? And if
Yeah.
you look at the way that's worked out, we ended up back at everybody owns their own thing, and maybe
Right.
that's not right either over the long run, but it is certainly where we've ended up after, what is it, 10 years, at least,
It's interesting that the phases we've watched this sort of the streaming world go through. I remember when I left CBS, one of the places that they called me was Shudder, the horror network.
Hard service. Yeah.
Yeah, which was interesting, except I am like the least interested in this. I'm like the biggest scaredy cat for movies ever, so I don't love
Horror's a
horror.
weird one to me too, because when I always say you want a targeted service, you want to go after a demographic, right? Like you want a niche, and the niche isn't content necessarily. It's like, who are you going after? And so I always ask this question. I go, who's a horror fan? You're like, it's men, it's women, it's old, it's young.
Yeah, and it's huge.
It's hard to market to, other than the like high, like, oh, these core 2 million horror fans in the world. To get to
Right.
the 20 million, you have to hit so many demos that it's very much unlike like an Acorn or or like a BBC, or like, oh, we're going to go do British dramas. I'm pretty sure you know your demo, right?
Right.
We're going
BritBox. Mwah.
BritBox, Women
Easy,
of Her
clean
Age. There you
product.
go. Like,
Yeah.
who you're going after. And that's easier, right? It's easier to market to like a known demographic than it is to be like anybody who might want to be scared this weekend, like, oh, that's a challenge.
When you look at streaming today, it is both massively fragmented, and at the same time, when you sign up to Verizon, they're like, here's your bundle, right? Like we're back into new bundles and stuff. Are we in a transitionary moment again, or are we in a this is how the world's going to look for a little while?
I think things are always changing in that space, right? There's always new ways to package bundle, and there's too many dollars, and a lot of people very interested in it in this country. It's a little less so depending on the territory you go to around
Sure.
the globe. And this phenomenon that every big US company is just going to roll the table internationally is just not true, right? Like, I think there's just going to be local providers that can absolutely punch, in those 1, 2, 3, 4 spots in their media consumption area.
Well, we did that when I was in Germany. I was working with Join, which is now back into ProSieben, but we launched them, and inside of 90 days, we had 5% of the German population had created an account within 90
And
days.
I sit on the board of Antenna Group out of Greece, which is, Greece is a relatively small country, but like,
Yeah.
there's 2 other streaming services, one from the main 2 broadcasters, Antenna being one of them, and they're going to do well, and they're going to do well across Eastern Europe because they know the content better, frankly, than that resonates with that audience. Now, it doesn't mean they own the big things that are created on a global basis. One of our biggest exports as the US is entertainment, and we do a great job. So like, those things are going to hunt as well. I think we're in a phase of what I call deconsolidation to reconsolidate at the major media company level. So
Okay.
you're seeing and I called this like probably 2 years ago, and now it's really starting to happen, which is these companies were organized around IP as the central organizing principle. I own this content franchises, and I can then monetize it in these 10 ways.
Yeah.
What turns out is that those 10 ways all have different return profiles. Theme parks, very cash generative, like movies, cash eating because they pay off over the long run, television, more about subscription, you go down and down and down and down. So each one has this different return profile. So the answer is you have to find, I think investors now want things that are matching to matching, right? They want like, wait, does this return profile match this thing? Okay, put those together. So what I think you're going to see is like cable assets be separated from studios, be separated from theme parks, be separated from these other assets, and then reconsolidated in areas that match so you can get the synergies of having a larger company in each of those slices. So right now we have what, 6 major media companies, 4 major tech companies playing in these spaces. I think it'll probably go to like, in the 20s and then come probably back down to the 10s, pretty quickly by those things merging together. Versant will be created. Someone else will, A&E will now be up for sale. Someone will buy. Warner Brothers will split. The studio will get bought. Like those trades are going to happen. And I think therefore services that go with them that were based on these company alignments are going to probably be based more on consumer alignments over time. So call me in 10 years. We'll do the founder at 60 or something like that. And, you got to give it some time because these are very complicated and high value things. But I think you'll end up in some different, conglomerations. And then you have these incredible parties like YouTube and Amazon Prime that are just doing an incredible job now bundling in different ways. Right. And I just think maybe Apple, maybe a few others have a capability to be the reconglomerators or at least the repackagers of how this all comes together. And I see that happening. I just don't know exactly. I have a vision for the way I think it should be, but it doesn't mean that's the way it's going to happen. Right.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of these, 500 cable networks, nope. But a set of big broadcast style networks, they may not be broadcasters necessarily, although I do think that survives a long time, along with a set of services that you have now paid for, does feel, like the way the future will look, from a package.
I like that. I think as I see it, we saw Prime has sort of always been dancing around this. Like there was always like subscribe to HBO Max through Prime and doing things like that. So I feel like they're really interestingly positioned to do stuff.
Yes.
But I also look at it like the moment Apple just makes it super easy to be like, check. These are all the services I want and just figure out my bill and all that.
Yeah, I mean, that exists today on YouTube, Amazon, and Apple. It's just not one or more of them are going to do even better at doing that, and we'll continue to improve that process and interface, and it'll just become the way you consume. By the way, I mean, I hands down believe YouTube TV is the best consumer product right now. Like if you want to consume a lot of stuff, like I look at that and the way that they have built that feels very, like it just knows how to program to me when I turn the thing on. Right.
And I want to be clear, you're saying YouTube TV, not YouTube Premium as far on this.
Now YouTube and YouTube Premium are different for a generation that is looking for, I'm a long form content consumer. I consume moderate amounts of short form, but not, and I know a lot of people do, but, ask my son, it's YouTube and YouTube Shorts, right? So I just think, those things are thriving. But like he'll watch long form episodes on Hulu and on Amazon. And so it's not like he's exclusive, he's playing the field.
When do you see, the traditional media world and large amounts of AI content showing up together? Because it's obviously on our horizon at some point. What do you, from someone who's on the business side, what do you think are the things that have to happen first?
Yeah, so like I was the CEO of Brightcove over the last 3 years, and we did launch an AI suite in the last year that I was there. And part of that was a full recognition that the technology, first of all, the reason I took that gig was that I thought the technology could be done so much more effectively and efficiently than we had done in 2011, 12, 13, and 14, building our own version of all these services. And turns out it's pretty useful for enterprises too. So, when I took that gig, I felt like that's where this industry was headed. And the answer was, I think I was right to some extent. It was not exactly the rocket ship of growth I thought it was going to be, but like there was a lot of opportunity there. And what I think happened with AI coming out is that you realize that the technology can be done in much more efficient ways using, now what I would, call AI or AI adjacent technologies that really make things just, can we encode faster, transcode better, get things into the cloud faster, need less code to, yes. Oh, wait, can you close caption the file? Can you search through those assets? Can you refine search and discovery? Can you clip assets automatically? Do you not need, as many hands on deck to like make more content for publishers and all things? So like all those things are happening and they are going to be transformative. So I think first and foremost, it's not about like, are they going to take the place of actors, directors, and writers? Like that's not stage one,
Right.
Stage one is like, we'll do this for an hour. Someone wants the 5-minute version. Jeremy doesn't have to cut it. Jeremy
Right.
AI cuts it and
Right.
spits it back to you to check the transcript, or you get to pick from the transcript which pieces you want in and which pieces you don't. And that's absolutely happening over the next 2 to 3 years.
But by the way, that's happened. That is what happens at the end of recording. I use Riverside. Riverside will suggest some clips. I'm a little biased, so I go off to Augie. But we built the same feature. I can upload the 40-minute whole thing. It figures out who the speakers are through the voices. It analyzes the thing and suggests clips. But we've also added one more layer where I can use a prompt to suggest a clip. So I can be like, I want a highlight of all the time Mark and Jeremy to talk about streaming media. We just want the streaming media recap. Augie will just do that. It won't be perfect. And anyone listening, I'm not just trying to plug my product, but where Mark's point is so right, it's like, but the human also has to show up and make sure it's the right one.
So I think for every form of content, let's take feature films and television and put them in a bucket for a second. Every other form of content already happening next 3 to 5 years. This is the age of that AI aided transformation. And it's not AI replacing, it's AI aiding the speed, efficacy, output, all those things that come with it. I think long form television and movies are already being impacted in the same way. Like the editor is going to be able to be like, find me all the scenes. I was also a producer on Kevin Costner's last, couple of movies, Horizon and American Saga. The amount of footage we shot, like just think about like the guy being like, I need horses running right to left on the St. George, Utah set, at this point. He's got to go through and catalog, and that's going to change, right? Just the way things are created is going to change. Now, the real thing is like, well, when do you get this like full AI aided content? I think we have it. The IP rules, the amount, are people going to accept it, that sort of thing. Like we're just, it's not all sorted out, right? And I think it's going to take time. I think nothing will replace the creative art of humans interacting with humans and creating emotion, but it doesn't mean you can't replicate lots of other pieces of the ecosystem in ways that will be more efficient. And I do subscribe to Jensen Huang's idea of like, if we have no new ideas, all the jobs will be replaced. But if we have new ideas and new concepts that need more work, we will become more productive using AI, and there will be things for us to do, to go achieve those as humans. So I don't sit here and worry, other than some current skill sets will become obsolete. We'll have to retrain and figure out where to go.
I always say that, somebody was once a phone operator, right? All these things, right?
My mother-in-law.
I talked to people, actually. We brought on some interns at Augie, and I talked to some people who were former video editors, and they're finding it difficult to find jobs right now. And I'll give 2 examples. One guy who worked with me, this guy Jesse, spent all his energy in like, what can I learn, right? And became an Augie sort of an evangelist, started training users, doing some sales for us, went to a conference, and as a result has now actually pivoted his career and is off doing other things. Another guy who came to me, was like, I just wish all the things were the way they used to be. I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool, but I don't think that's a real, that sounds like a wish. That's what that is,
I mean, like, to just take even the objects you see that are CGI created in movies, like those have been like sort of replicants, drawings, whatever they are. Now you can take the actual image, scan it, and make an actual like fully 3D rendered model of that thing, whatever the thing is. I think mostly people think for video games and weaponry, but like there are other objects that you can create that don't have IP attached, right? And I think the real challenge is going to be the law, going to enable this, hinder it, enable people to be compensated fairly. It's going to be a really interesting, sort of 5 to 10 years on that front for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm actually already surprised at the pace AI video is moving. When I was talking, especially because I'm in it, when I was talking to people even a year and a half ago, at the time I said, I think we're probably 4 to 6 years away from video being something that might fool a human. And now I'm like, it's here now. Like we're at full of human potential today. And we're not that far from prototype a version of Iron Man 4 with Timothy Chalamet and, Steve Gutenberg. I don't know. There's a Police Academy deep cut for everybody. I still think and I still maintain it's going to be quite some time before anything like that is good, right? It's still so rare to have a really good movie or really good, like great TV show, that to think that the first wave of AI stuff is going to be a mess.
I agree. It's good. We'll see. We'll see where it plays out. I think it's going to be a really interesting, time period. But I held it with more revere and opportunity than fear and trepidation or anything like that.
I think you have to. I think you have to be sort of that optimistic perspective. Last question for you, Mark. Given everything you've accomplished, how do you define success today? What's success mean for you now?
For me personally, I've been very lucky to work for some great people, create some great teams with others, create teams on my own. Like, to me, it's a little bit more about the mission and the people than it is so much about the stock price and the reward, although all those things matter to everybody and they matter to me too. And so as I think about what I go to do next, it's going to be, are these spaces that are interesting to me? Are there people that I think I can either get behind or bring behind me or bring with me to make some really interesting things happen? And do we see an opportunity to make something good happen, either for an industry, for a user base, financially for all of us, whatever that outcome is. But, I generally, tend to think it depends, right, on those KPIs that you go after and what you put, it's all about goal setting. And if you can set those right goals, then you can define success for the right situation, right? And so I think success at CBS and then eventually at Paramount for me was different than success for me at Breako, was different than success for me when I was early in my career, which was more about, whether it be learning or, advancing or building great teams or a financial result that worked out for shareholders. Like, it really just depends. But, I feel fortunate that I've had a lot of opportunities to experiment with different forms of success in that regard. And it's fun to watch all the other folks that I've worked with, or many of them, have their own versions of that success, either both with me and then like in other endeavors. And it's just amazing to see the people that I've been able to work around and all the things they accomplish, right? I find that to be almost like I have somehow weirdly take, some pride in that, even though like I have nothing to do with their future success at the end of the day, right? They all do it themselves, but it's really fun to watch. And I'm intrigued by the changes in our industry. It's going to be a really interesting, set of years and where things go.
That's wonderful. What a great kind of comment to take us out on. Mark, I know you're between things. Do you want to send people anywhere? Is there a cause or to your own homepage? Where should people go on the internet today?
No, I mean, look, I'm as you said, I'm in between. I sit on a number of boards that are hopefully thriving. Nothing for folks to look at. I do sit on a nonprofit board, which, if you're so endeavored and you live in New York and you care about kids 12 to 24 that don't get all the essential services at home, we sort of supply them through this charity called The Door. I've been on the board for almost 15 years now, and it's a wonderful charity. Helps about 10,000 at-risk youth per year. So if you're so inclined. But no, otherwise, I'm, looking forward to seeing what everybody else is doing, and, stay tuned. I'll have another chapter as well.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for being with me today, Mark.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's great to see you.